Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of the Down the Donut Hole podcast on a very fun and important holiday.
You guys have never done a Sunday episode, have you?
Nope.
No, that's right.
So this is a treat for listeners.
Yeah. Something extra.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I think there'll be more of a treat with the actual colored eggs and all the fun stuff.
And all the chocolate and that.
Yeah, chocolate
Okay.
bunnies, yeah.
What's the story? Okay, let's just dive right into this donut hole. I
Okay.
want to know. You always have all the facts and interesting tidbits about stuff we take for granted. What's the deal with Easter and Easter eggs?
Okay. Easter eggs. Right off the bat, symbol of fertility, symbol of rebirth. In a Christianized sense, it is representative of the tomb that the body of the crucified Christ was laid into. And when the eggs are cracked open, that is a reminder of unsealing the tomb to find that Jesus had risen.
See, I mean, everybody. I think it's people associate Easter with Jesus' death and resurrection and all that, right? So I mean, I always thought that the Easter egg was like a pagan symbol.
It
that
is.
I thought they were separated.
No.
And it was like,
So many Christian symbols that we're very familiar with have Christian imagery and ideologies overlaid over pre-Christian pagan symbolism, seasonal symbolism. Remember, on April Fool's Day, we talked about how the Julian calendar was superseded by the Gregorian calendar.
I think everybody
And
thought that
that-
was not true, though, because it was April Fool's.
It was April Fool's
But
Day.
No, it was a good episode. It was good.
This would be the beginning of the new year. This would not be like we think of it. We're 3 months in the new year, but no.
You mean Easter would be the beginning of the new year?
Yes.
Oh.
In the old Julian calendar and in pre-Christian ways of marking time, not formalized like the calendars that we think of, but always the beginning of spring, when the days are getting longer and warmer, that began the new year. And so this is a time of celebration. For Christians, on Good Friday, which is the beginning of the Easter celebration.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but what can you explain? What is there? Is Fat Tuesday have anything to do with anything?
Yes, Fat Tuesday is the first day of Lent.
Okay.
Well, it's actually the day before the first day of Lent. And Fat Tuesday, they call it so because before the people went into their 40 days of fasting toward Easter, which would be concluded on Easter, they would use up all their supplies that were forbidden during the fasting period,
And that was
during
your
the
first-
Lenten period.
That was your first episode.
Our very first episode of Down the Donut Hole podcast happened on Fat Tuesday. And it's interesting because the celebration of Easter has lots of different foods associated with it. One of the ones that come to mind quickly is hot cross buns. You've heard the children's nursery rhyme, hot cross buns, hot cross buns.
You're going to sing
One
it?
a penny, two a penny, hot cross
All
buns.
together now.
If you have no daughters, then give them to your sons. One a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. Now, a hot cross bun has raisins in it or other dried fruits in it. It's a yeasty roll, if you want to look at it like that. And it has a cross cut in the top, and there's flour paste that
I'm going to be
goes
very
in the
careful what
groove.
I say right now.
So with this cross cut in the top, originally these hot cross buns were a tribute to the goddess, the Germanic goddess Easter.
Oh, wait. Okay. So it's not a.
It's a
the
Christian.
cross is not on the hot cross buns is not a Christian cross.
No.
Okay. So wait. There's a god. Where does Easter come from? So that's what you're getting to, right? With the name,
the
word
name
Easter.
Easter does not reference a compass direction in terms of east.
Oh, geez.
However, there is some belief that it is a reference to that because of the rising sun
In the east, yeah.
in the east, which could very easily be associated with the concept of the dead Jesus rising from the dead on Easter Sunday.
But there's a
like the
an
rising
Easter
sun,
goddess.
called Easter, capital E-O-S-T-R-E, pronounced Easter or Eostre. And so she was a Germanic goddess, very buxom, very beautiful, long blonde hair, always depicted with surrounded by bunnies and birdies and
Wait, is that where
spring
the
flowers.
bunnies for Easter?
Yes.
Easter bunnies?
Yes.
Really?
She's a fertility goddess, and who's more fertile than bunnies? So, also, it's interesting. You know that there's a difference between bunnies, rabbits, and hares. Did you know that?
Well, I knew there was a difference.
The Easter
but
hare.
and if I knew what that difference was, I forgot.
Well, generally size, right? The hares tend to be longer legged and bigger.
And bigger and longer ears. Also, though, and even more importantly, I
Hares
think
are better at math.
hares,
I don't know.
hares are born with their eyes open, which is part of the
so you
reason
can't
why
put anything over on them.
sometimes hares have been associated with witches and warlocks and other occult images, because the hares with their eyes open, they're difficult to trick. They seem like they're born knowing. They're born aware, not vulnerable and blind and, with eyes sealed shut for a long time like rabbits are. So they're born with the ability to survey their surroundings, and they're very difficult to catch even from birth because of that. And hares live in a solitary life. They have their nests are sort of a depression in the ground, where rabbits dig warrens and they live communally. So hares are a bit more, you could without much of a stress, independent and a little bit secretive because they're separate. And that's part of why they were always associated as, a witch's familiar, or that anybody who could transmute could change into, a hare or a crow or other cunning creatures.
Is that why magicians pull rabbits out of hats? I don't know.
Probably. They're probably easy to get too because there's so many rabbits.
Yeah.
But because rabbits especially are prolific breeders, they're symbols of fertility. So that's part of the reason.
And how do you say the goddess's name again?
Eostre or
Eostre.
Easter. And so...
And she was surrounded, so she's a fertility goddess.
Yes.
And where
Germanic,
okay.
Saxon, Eastern European, in that area of the world.
And how far back does her story?
Pre-Christian times.
Really?
Way back into pagan antiquity. And this idea of these hot cross buns, they would bake these buns and they believed that they did not go moldy. And especially in Christian times, any hot cross buns that were baked on Good Friday.
That's what I was going to ask you about Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So I hope we get back to this.
Good Friday, if these hot cross buns are baked on Good Friday, they say they don't go moldy for a whole year. And so people would take and keep them. They would sometimes hang them from the rafters in their little houses. And if someone in the household got extremely ill, they would break off pieces of those Good Friday hot cross buns and feed that to the sick person, believing that they were a cure for all ills, including some very serious ones.
So the connection with eggs is sort of feminine too, isn't it?
Very much
so. Goddess, yeah.
Very much so. And the thing with these hot cross buns, if they were meant to be consumed on Good Friday, because people spent most of the day in church. And it was a relief because they're made with eggs. It's a risen yeasty dough, and light, fluffy. There's raisins in it. And so it would give them a bit of sustenance, and they were glad to have it because remember now they've gone almost 40 days without having anything with eggs in it, and meat, not at all. And, just kind of low protein. So after that length of time, it would be a very welcome treat. And also sort of a harbinger of, having this be over with, this Lenten cycle be over with. So they're associated, hot cross buns are associated with Good Friday, with the goddess Easter, and with Easter Sunday.
What about
because
the
they rise.
rabbit? I mean, it was connected to the eggs really well, but I'm missing a little bit of how the rabbit came to be a thing with all that.
Well, the rabbit, again, is a fertility symbol because they're such prolific breeders.
I gotcha. Okay.
And so those are kind of cute little references.
But
fun.
why do kids dye? Why do they dye eggs? Well, they used to dye eggs, right? And why do they hunt for them? And why are they hidden? And why do they search for those? Where's that from?
Again, Eastern European cultures have always had traditions of eggs in the springtime as a rite because they're easy to get relatively. They would dye them, and they had specific ways to dye them, predominantly red in early Christianity, coming out of pre-Christian pagan annual events, rituals. The Catholic Church specifically would dye them red as a reference to the blood of Jesus Christ that was shed on the cross. And so they would dye them, they would put other images on them, crosses, or again, memento of the crucifixion, sometimes dots, sometimes 5 dots.
Why the 5 dots? What was that?
The 5 wounds of Christ.
Okay.
And, in his hands and feet. So 4. That's also echoed in the Paschal candle, which is also a symbol of Easter, which is interesting. The Holy Saturday ritual has to do with the lighting of the candle. And that candle has on it a cross. It has an alpha and an omega symbol on this beeswax pillar candle, kind of a fat candle. And it would have the year, the specific year on there. It would have 5 pieces of incense that represent those 5 wounds. And it would be at various points, sometimes in the morning on Easter, sometimes on Holy Saturday, this Paschal, Paschal candle would be plunged in water as a symbol of an invitation for the Holy Spirit to descend upon the people and to enlighten people, to strengthen their faith, and to help prepare them to lead more godly lives, more loving lives. The search for Easter eggs, especially the ones dyed red in these Eastern European cultures, highly decorated, like the Pasonki eggs. There are wooden Pasonki eggs that you can buy today that are very brightly painted. Not all of them are red anymore because as Christian tradition has advanced over the years, they used other colors.
What are Pasonki eggs?
It's an egg dyeing technique using wax, a wax resist technique where they would dye eggs one beautiful color. Then they would draw the designs on with melted wax with these special little, it's like a little pin with a hole in it.
Oh, yeah. I remember as a kid that some of those egg dyeing coloring kits included a little wax.
Crayon.
Yeah, like a wax crayon.
Then they would dye it again, and then you pull the wax off.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then you can over-dye things, and so you get more colors. So those would be hidden. And in those
why
cultures...
Pasonki? It's a fun word. I can see
it's a technique.
Pasonki. I did really good.
Pasonki is a technique, is that wax resist technique. It's like, the tie-dye.
Right, but was there a person named Pasonki, or we don't know?
Dave, I don't know that.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have to look that
Anyway,
up.
they would hide those eggs for the women and the kids. And they would go about and have a joyful time finding them.
Oh, so wait a minute. So the women were competing with the kids, or
Helping the
did they
kids.
just kind of knock them over and get the eggs? And that doesn't seem fair.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I can't swear that didn't happen. But no, I know how it is helping our kids find Easter eggs over the years. You know, you have somebody big kind of go along and you're surveying where you see one and then kind of directing little tots over in that direction. Anyway, that's a little reference to the lifelong search for higher spiritual enlightenment. You are always seeking the next level of understanding or spiritual maturity. It's like nowadays, there are Easter eggs, they call it, hidden in movies. And it's something you keep your eye out for that gives you a little extra understanding of maybe some of the plot, aspects or something like that.
It's like a special thing that's hidden.
Yeah. And those who know to look will look.
Yeah, like those activity books for kids too. At least way back when,
Yeah.
stuff was hidden in the artwork somehow.
Those hot cross buns, a lot of the spices that go in those are references to embalming spices, cinnamons and certain oils and things like that. And when Jesus was crucified, we call Jesus Christ. And a lot of people think that Christ was his last name, and that is not right.
It was Jones.
It was,
no, that's the group.
Christ means the anointed.
right,
Jesus Christ, Christos, comes from a Greek word for the anointed. And so we have the story of the woman with the alabaster jar who washed Jesus' feet and anointed his feet with very expensive oils and then dried his feet with her hair. That's an anointing. We have another anointing when, I believe, Mary of Bethany poured oil, expensive oil, over Jesus' head while he was reclining at table at the home of Simon the leper. You remember Lazarus and Martha and Mary.
Yeah.
And Mary especially followed Jesus. She went with him as he went about his ministry. She wasn't confined just to her household. So she was a big part of Jesus' ministry, as were many other women. It's interesting that it was the women who went to the sepulcher and found him gone. And one of the things that people have to remember about that is that sepulcher was sealed shut with a wax seal applied by representatives of the Roman Empire. So anybody who thought that they would like to go in there and remove the body of Jesus to make prophecies come true, you had to think twice, because with that Roman seal on there, it's like a scroll that's been sealed. You break that seal.
The tomb?
Yeah.
Tomb.
Really? So it's not just the stone that was rolled in front of it?
No,
and you
and
can just
then
roll it away and roll it back?
Then it was a wax seal on there. So they
Wow.
could tell if it had been rolled off. And you break that seal, and you have put yourself in opposition to the entire Roman Empire.
And they had guards there, right?
Guards. Yes.
Now, why do they have guards there? Because they thought there might be some chicanery going on?
Yes, because he had become very, very popular. And so they were put in position to make sure that there was no funny business. And so when the tomb was found empty, that's hugely significant. And so the breaking of an egg is like breaking the seal of the tomb. That's part of the Christianized understanding of what those eggs are to symbolize. Not just fertility, not just rebirth, not just redemption, but also the breaking of the seal on the sepulcher that held the body of the crucified Christ.
Boy, we sure have come a long way with our Easter bunnies and our Easter eggs from what their meanings are.
Yes,
Wow.
we've kind of lost a little bit of that. The red on those eggs, especially in early Christian Eastern European cultures, symbolized the blood of Christ. And they're this is, we take it for granted. It's hard to bake without eggs. So there wasn't a lot of baking going on in terms of treat type things. So these fruited breads, have you heard of simnel cakes? Mm-mm. A simnel cake is another Eastern European tradition that was carried to Britain, to England, to Ireland. And these simnel cakes were like a light fruit cake. So it would have like dried apricots, other fruits, raisins, currants, that sort of thing.
And those inclusions also help preserve it for longer. I found that out because I like raisin toast.
And
it doesn't go stale as quickly as just plain bread.
No, and if you're going camping or something, it's a good idea to take raisin bread with you for the duration of your trip because it keeps much better than plain bread.
Or put raisins in a plastic bag with any bread. You can just throw some raisins in there or something like that.
These simnel cakes, kind of a round cake, and it would have almond paste, marzipan frosting over the top of this light fruit cake, and other spices in there. And then on the top of the cake, picture 12 balls, traditionally balls. Sometimes this time of year, the balls are squished a little bit so they look more like eggs, all around the outer border of a round cake. Sometimes there's one in the middle, and then 11 on the circumference of the cake. And what those symbolize would be the Christ in the center and 11 of the apostles, with Judas having been excluded for his betrayal.
And one woman?
No, we don't. There's there's nothing connected
That's a
with
carefully
that
hidden
I know
secret.
about. But so these little balls would be like candy because it's almond paste.
Judas was excluded
from this.
It was
cake.
excluded from life.
This cake representation.
But his role was necessary to fulfill the prophecy, wasn't it, or whatever?
Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Without him, there would be no. I mean, he's kind of a jerk, I guess.
But he got his reward.
Yeah.
He got the silver. So there is no further reward for him. So
I guess
See, other people.
Look, I'm not pro Judas. I don't want to.
You don't want to go. You don't want to go there.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy subject there, actually.
It is.
I'm not trying to make Judas great again. That's not what I'm trying to do.
The symbolism is very interesting. When you see the 11, they'd be like candy. So anybody who's not familiar with marzipan, it's an almond paste that's very pliable. And
super delicious.
Decorations,
it
is
crazy
really delicious and wonderful. In the coloring of Easter eggs, not just red is important, but yellow symbolizes resurrection and like the sunlight.
So a burst of light energy.
And blue is meant to symbolize love, pure love.
Really?
Red, just generally in artistic terms, can symbolize passion. It symbolized carnality because of its association with blood. But blue symbolizes spiritual love, not carnal or physical or sexual love.
What about purple?
Purple is royal. Kings.
What about the basket, though? Is that modern?
It's good for holding eggs.
Okay, yeah, that was a little weak. That was a little weak.
However, baskets are often woven of water reeds and other things. And,
see, I knew there was more to it. I knew.
Certainly, you have Palm Sunday when in Catholic churches for certain.
Can you help me on something? I'm sorry.
The Protestants do that too. But.
Sure.
Can we run through those days? Fat Tuesday, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, Palm Sunday.
Okay.
Is there anything else that's
Holy Saturday.
Okay.
And we have Good Friday.
Can you just run those through those?
Okay. Ash Wednesday is a day in the Catholic Church where Catholics go and they have a cross of ashes put on their forehead. And the prayer that is said is, "Thou art dust, and unto dust thou shalt return." And it's a reminder of your mortality, that this is not your final destination. You're just passing through this life. So do as much good as you can, because you must go to the next life.
And what's that
to the
connection
spiritual life.
to Jesus's death?
Well, the ash is made from burned palms. And palms, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem he was riding a donkey. And a donkey is a lowly beast, a beast of burden, certainly not a kingly, majestic entrance into the city. And Jesus did this, in fulfillment of prophecy, but also the symbolism of this king who people believed was the Messiah.
Humility.
It's humility. It's service. It's about service. It's not about uplifting yourself or becoming grand or grandiose or power. It's not at all about power. It's about service to your fellow man. And you have certainly Jesus' parables, and again, he said that his message was that you love one another. As much as you loved yourself, you love your neighbor. And he says it all boils down to that. Love your God and love thy neighbor as thyself. And so it doesn't
And the
get
answer was
any-
no.
Well, you could say that if you're just looking at the evidence. And
So the Wednesday is when he rode into town, right?
No.
Okay.
that is Palm Sunday. That is
Oh, okay.
1 week before Easter. And so we commemorate Palm Sunday and his arrival on the scene in an official way, indicating that he is the Christos, that he is the anointed one. And if you remember at the trial of Jesus, when he was confronted, they said, did you say that you are King of the Jews? Because if you proclaim that you're the King of the Jews, that would be like one of us saying, well, I'm President of the United States, and then going in some triumphant
Thank God.
procession into some city. That's not going to set well with the actual rulers. And
Usually
so,
not, no.
and especially because there had been deals cut, for the governing of these Jewish communities by Rome.
Wait, are you suggesting politics and religion in cahoots somehow? I don't believe that.
I don't think human beings will ever really
what
be
was-
able to
We
separate
could do a
out
few
of it.
shows on that too.
So what
now,
was-
that you mentioned Jewish traditions and all
Yeah.
that, I study some French, and I always wondered why they use the word Pâques for Easter. And literally that's their word for the Passover.
The Passover. Pascal, too. P-A-S-C-H-A-L.
However, important
Also-
distinction is if without the S, it means the Passover. But
Yes.
with the S, it means Easter.
Yes.
So
Easter,
it might have been a
again,
bit lazy there. I don't know.
1 week after the celebration of the Passover, which during the time the Israelites spent in Egypt, this was the beginning of their ability to exit from Egypt. When all the plagues descended upon Egypt, because they would not allow the Jewish people to leave. And so the Jewish people marked their doorways, the lintel of their doorways, with the blood of a sacred lamb. And so these plagues passed over those households. And that's the meaning of Passover. So that the children of Israel did not suffer those same plagues that absolutely tormented the people of Egypt, because the rulers at the time would not let them leave, wanted them to remain enslaved there. And so that's a memento. When we have the palms, when they pass out the palms on Palm Sunday, that's to remind people of the Passover. And then those same palms that are used in that ceremony then are burned to ash, and they remind us of our mortality on Ash Wednesday. So the ones that were used the previous Passover, Palm Sunday, they're saved, burned, and then just the ashes put on people's forehead, memento mori. Remember your mortality. Remember that you are a finite being in this world, and that your spirit is what will go on. So that's important. In terms of Good Friday, we know that is the day of the actual crucifixion. Holy Saturday is a solemn day in Christian households because it is the day we remember that Jesus is in the earth. He is dead. And we await the promise. We await the fulfillment of the promise of him rising from the dead. And when Jesus triumphs over death, he triumphs over sin. He triumphs over all of the things that essentially rot and hold back and are shackles to the spirit. So that's we can be free of all of that.
It's like bursting
in
out of
faith,
a shell.
like an egg. So there's a lot of symbolism. That's one of the things that's so beautiful about this time of year. Not only are the days getting longer and warmer, and the promise of being able to put seeds in the ground soon and expect a harvest, all of this calls to mind certain cycles. And in the celebration of those cycles, those events, these rituals, I, for one, believe it's important to mark them. It isn't just a silly thing, because otherwise one day blurs into the other. But if you break it up, even with the smallest little memento, if you're alone, buy a hot cross bun. Enjoy it. Think about what it symbolizes. Because they believed that they could store these hot cross buns all year. And like I say, they'd hang them from their rafters. They were taken on ships, and they believed that rats wouldn't touch them.
But rats did.
I don't know. They probably did. 'Cause
always-
I don't think the rats would care.
It's always fascinating that you have these events or these holidays, and you think they're just like one way, but then you realize all these other cultures and religions also have something to say about these
Yes.
periods and these events and all that stuff.
And that there's a big contribution from earlier cultures. We have remnants of our deep ancestry in some of these rituals which we observe. And like I say, it is important in small ways to do something nice for yourself. It restores balance. If you just let one day bleed into the next and week after week, and that everything is same old for you, you become tired. Your psyche becomes burdened. And so in an effort to seek balance and renewal and to bring a little bit of spark into your life, it doesn't need to be some big, expensive thing. Just something small. Go, like I always say, go sit outside for a little while, listen to the birds sing, maybe eat a hot cross bun.
Yeah,
Or
it's
a
been
pretty
shown.
dye eggs. Do it for your own pleasure.
It's been shown that there's value just in the ritual and the tradition in and of itself, no matter what it's about.
Right. In the creating of traditions. If for some reason you do something this year and it makes you happy, do it again next year. Do it better. I know families that bake bunny cakes. I know one family of people that I love very much, and they have a family contest to see whose Easter bunny cake looks the nicest or the fanciest. And so the outcome is they have lots and lots of cake that they can share, and they try everybody's cake, and it becomes a really fun part of their specific family celebration. And I love that because that sort of evolved over time, you know. And during the course of the year, people are thinking about, okay, maybe I'll try this recipe this year. So it changes a little bit here and there. Maybe they get a new cake pan or a tin or something like that. Certainly, Paschal lambs, you see the butter molds that you can get that are in the shape of a lamb. They come in. I have a little, I think it's a butter mold, but I've used it for a cake pan. It's a little aluminum pan that comes in 2 parts. So it's a 3D lamb. One year after we moved to this current house, everything was just not working the way I hoped. And so we had an Easter meatloaf made in that lamb pan. And so it took me no longer to cook that or bake it. I just used that pan, sat it up. We put like some greens around it, salad greens around it, and some other things around it. And it looked so cute. And it cost me hardly anything. And it was just kind of a creative effort that made us all smile. It was not expensive. It was a meatloaf, guys. And
Turkey. So
Yeah,
that would be a mutton key or
I don't
or
know. But it was really cute. And again, we think of the Lamb of God, and that is a reference to Jesus as the sacrificial lamb, which would be offered in atonement for sins. So I like those butter molds. I think they look really cute.
we used to have contests of who had the best decorated egg, how
Yeah.
artistic it was, and
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it keeps the kids interested. And I've always enjoyed all of that. And it's a good excuse to be creative. It's a good way to direct things in that way. Des, you wrote a song, which I think is spectacular for this time of year. What's the name of it?
Bunnies and Beans.
well, that seems to make sense. Yeah,
So you know what the beans part is, right?
yeah, the eggs, the candy eggs. Yeah,
The jelly beans.
Jelly
exactly.
beans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we going to get to hear that song? Can you do that for us?
Yeah, I could dig it out. Yeah, if you want, what do you want at the end?
Yeah.
Shall we do
We'll go
that?
out.
I can get it for you for
we'll
the
go
end.
out on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's just a goofy little tune, but I guess
how did you think to do that?
As he's driving around delivering.
yeah, it's actually from a long time ago. Used to do like little holiday songs for TV,
Oh,
Oh, cool.
so they would just like minute here and there. Didn't get very far. Got a lot of St. Patrick's Day songs out of it. but one Easter song, and I think a Mother's Day song and a Father's Day song, and then believe it or not, no Christmas songs, no
there's
Valentine's
yeah,
Day songs,
That's been done.
Yeah.
That's covered.
no April Fool songs.
you try harder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
next year maybe.
No, you are an excellent songwriter and a very good singer. And so I'm looking very forward to hearing that.
Well, I probably don't sound like that anymore, but yeah, I can find that, sure.
Excellent.
We could just have him a cappella it on the way out.
Oh God, no.
Okay, we'll have the produced version then.
I love the church music too, associated with the holidays. You know, when you go into a quiet church, and I used to love when the nuns would be singing. And
Now you've got me, like, that Bunnies and Beans was it's like a goofy little ditty that was just supposed to be some Easter related song, and Easter in the commercial sense of it, not like, too deep. Now I'm like reevaluating the lyrics, and it really is, there's a bridge the bridge is like, the winter will whisper dead in your ear, telling you stories you don't want to hear. And
that's so cool.
but now I'm like, oh, it's kind of in
reference to
Yeah.
coming out of a cold,
So yes, I meant it
deprived.
that way. I don't know.
So I think you meant it in a spirit of fun, it sounds like.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you were tagging all of the symbolism that's associated with the deep, deep, deep history of the holiday of Easter, rebirth, spring, regeneration.
Yeah.
How about that? Which one of the presidents had a big jar of jelly beans?
That would be Reagan, wasn't it?
Was
Wasn't he like Carter was the peanut guy, Reagan was the jelly bean guy, and I'm trying to think of all the other. Yeah, I think it was Reagan was known for. I was going to say Tom
all the
Baker. But
presidents
that's
had their
Doctor
own
Who.
candy. I didn't know that.
The Jelly Babies was Doctor Who. Tom Baker.
Yeah.
But the jelly beans was that was a Ronald Reagan thing, I think.
Was there an M&M president?
Was that Clinton? I don't know.
Do you
Could
remember
be.
when you guys went to school? Did they sell Easter candy at your school?
Like
No.
Easter seals for Easter
Yeah.
seals or something like that. I don't know. And what's Easter Island?
Oh, that's a different thing. We won't go.
Are those? Is that connected to the goddess?
Probably.
Probably.
Oh, we got to talk about
They
that.
had all
I'll
the
have to-
the
I'll have to-
Maori huge stone sculptures and all that.
So you've opened up this whole Easter.
But I think
Yeah.
Easter
Easter
Island,
Gate.
it probably means that it's further east, that it's an island that's further east. I would
Eastest.
definitely go with the calendar direction
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, compass.
Yeah. I think, all of these little symbolisms and that sort of thing, that after you think about what they mean, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? Little things will pop up and it will deepen your appreciation of what you're seeing. And I think even the little plastic decorations and things like that, sometimes unwittingly, they're very specific in adornment, I think like the idea of the cross being also compass directions and that sort of thing. I know with these hot cross buns things that it's also indicative of the phases of the moon, the 4 phases of the moon. So on the hot cross buns, what looks like a Christian cross, what Christianity has adopted as a symbol of the crucifixion in pagan times, that was indicative of the phases of the moon, with Aster or Aoster being a fertility goddess, and most goddesses are associated with the moon, not
Right.
the sun. The sun is
correct,
much
yeah.
more male symbol, because certainly of human female menses cycles is associated
It's like
with
night
the
and
moon.
day. Night and day is the.
Yeah. Yin
interesting.
yang. Again, balance.
Yeah.
Balance. And that's what we're talking about. Now, tomorrow is Dingus Day. We'll talk a little bit.
I don't have a song for that. Sorry.
Get to work.
You got 24 hours.
Okay.
Get to work. I'll give
It
you
sounds
some more.
Irish to me.
Yeah, what is
Dingus.
Dingus?
It is
Day?
Irish. Well,
said
it
it was
comes
born.
it comes from Western European cultures, but it has made its way by diffusion to Ireland, England, and all the derivative cultures
What
from
about
those.
what about the Asian cultures? Do they say anything? What do their connection with Easter at all? Or
I don't know. Most cultures do have some rituals and some elements that call up what they mean.
Yeah, there's
Look
there's
at
got to be a
dragons
thread there
and-
somewhere, because it all predates all of these
and,
Yeah.
and it's
cultures
all,
that we're familiar with now.
but it's all a sign of birth and rebirth, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
the
Yes, I think it's certainly fitting, and so this time of year, do allow your spirit to be reborn. Let yourself play, let yourself have some fun. Certainly, we'll get back to the nervous news, but it's been kind of nice taking a break from all of
yeah.
that. It's highly advised.
I bet your desk is probably piling up.
Oh, I know. My desk is
Doesn't
piling up, and
extend.
I'm going to have to
That's
look
okay.
at that tomorrow.
I think we can skip some
Anyway,
of that.
guys, we're out of time.
Well, happy Easter.
Very
Hoppy.
nice. Bunnies and beans.
I
Yeah.
like that. Wow, it's a huge universe.
It is. It is. And we are all human beings. No matter what culture we come from, we're all worthy.
We're all earthlings.
Have a great day, guys.
Count your blessings.
Bye.
Thank you.
Springtime is early, I might take a chance. Springtime, you kick me in the seat of the pants. And all the old feelings, they start to advance. The once winter buried with only a glance. Now it's time to pick flowers and dance. So hop to me, roll to me, show me a sign. Bunnies and beans, you will be mine. Up to me, roll to me, any old time. Bunnies and beans, I'm gonna shine. But the winter will whisper dead in your ear, telling you stories you don't wanna hear, making you doubt, making you fear. But the bunnies are forcing the sun to appear. So hop to me, roll to me, show me a sign. Bunnies and beans, you will be mine. Up to me, roll to me, any old time. Bunnies and beans, I'm gonna shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna shine.